chair, oh, wouldn't it be lovely?
It is one of the great joys of my life to be a part of the story of My Fair Lady. It is recognized as one of the most distinguished and brilliant musical plays of all time. Alan J. Lerner and Frederick Loewe made theatrical history in 1956 and influenced all musicals thereafter. Never did songs fit so seamlessly into the story and reveal so much about personalities, moods, and attitudes. Broadway shows in the 50s were not recorded live on film, but thanks to George Cukor's marvelous integration of his own direction and Moss Hart's original staging, the movie preserves the play forever. My Fair Lady began right here in London as the play Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. An aggressive, eccentric producer named Gabriel Pascal somehow managed to talk the irascible Shaw into giving him the film rights to all his work, including Pygmalion. The movie was released in 1938 and starred Leslie Howard as Higgins, who was perfectly suited for the role, and as the first in a long line of Elizas, the wonderful Wendy Hiller.
Woman, cease this detestable boo-hooing instantly.
I've a right to be here if I like, same as you.
A woman who utters such depressing and disgusting sounds has no right to be anywhere.
Ooh.
Remember that you're a human being with a soul, the divine gift of articulate speech, and that your language is the language of Milton, Shakespeare, and the Bible. Don't sit there crooning like a bilious pigeon.
Oh!
Ow! Hems, what a sound. You see this creature with her curbstone English? The English that will keep her in the gutter for the rest of her days? Well, sir, in 3 months I could pass her off as a duchess at an ambassador's reception. No. Yes, I could even get her a job as a lady's maid or a shop assistant, which requires better English.
You mean you could make me?
Yes, you squashed cabbage leaf. You disgrace to the noble architecture of these columns. You incarnate insult to the English language. I could pass you off as the Queen of Sheba. Yeah.
Gabriel Pascal knew there was more than one way to tell a good story and became obsessed with the idea of making Pygmalion into a musical, against Shaw's wishes and everyone's advice. He offered the property to Rodgers and Hammerstein, Noel Coward, and every composer and lyricist on Broadway. None of them would attempt it. Lerner and Loewe tried for months to work out the problems. First, it was a one-set drawing room comedy. Second, it was a non-love story as Shaw had written it. They finally gave up and went their separate ways. Sometime later, Gabriel Pascal died, and his estate was in conflict with the Shaw estate over the Pygmalion rights. Things weren't working out for Alan either.
I have never witnessed Alan at a lower ebb in his life and his work than he was at that time. I think that was truly a crossroad for him. One afternoon, we were sitting and talking, and he started to weep. And he said, "Nothing is working. I may never work again. I should be working with Fritz, and he won't have me." And I said, "Why don't we go to the country for the weekend and invite Fritz for lunch?" And he said he won't come. And I said, "Well, I'm going to invite him." The three of us had lunch in our little dining room in Rockland County. And Alan said, "You know, Fritz, the rights for Pygmalion are loosening up. We've talked about it a long time." He said, "I think it's possible to get them." He said, "You know, I have an idea for the opening." And Fritz said, "What is it?" And Alan began to spin his powerful web of storytelling and dreaming and imagining. And the two of them never finished their dessert. They left the table, and there I was left alone, which happened quite often after that. And they walked across the lawn, across the road to Alan's little studio, and they sat down and they began that afternoon writing My Fair Lady.
Alan and Fritz had such confidence in what they were writing, they began to put their production team together. They asked Moss Hart to direct and couldn't bear to wait for his final answer. They visited him at his summer home in New Jersey.
And across from our house, in this kindergarten, there was a broken down upright piano that had lost quite a few keys and had suffered from the damp. And that's the first time I heard the score, and it swept everything in front of it. It was like a love affair. It was irresistible. Morse had already heard a couple of the songs before, but they came down to Long Beach Island, to Beach Haven, to play for Morse and me. And he couldn't say no. It seemed like the most wonderful project in the world.
Alan had very early on determined that the piece was more about Higgins than about Liza. It was about his dilemma of, the misogynist dilemma of having falling in love and not ever wanting to get married and not knowing that he was in love. So that dilemma, that growing accustomed to somebody's face dilemma, brought focus onto the Higgins character. And then when you think of who can really play Shaw, who is really a Shavian actor, and then you have to find out whether they can sing or not. You have to go to the very, very best actors in the world to be able to deliver that. They went first to Rex. They found out what his range was and said, we have to write for this man in this manner. This man speaks songs, and that gave them a fresh approach to the musical theater at that point. Instead of writing big ballads, instead of writing romantic expressions, they could write tart, sharp, brittle, witty kind of melodies and lyrics.
Look at her, a prisoner of the gutters, condemned by every syllable she utters. By right, she should be taken out and hung for the cold-blooded murder of the English tongue. Ow! Oh, heavens, what a sound. This is what the British population calls an elementary education.
Come, sir, I think you picked a poor example.
Did I? Hear them down in Soho Square, dropping H's everywhere, speaking English any way they like. You, sir, did you go to school?
What do you take me for, a fool?
Well, no one taught him take instead of tyke. Hear a Yorkshireman, or worse, hear a Cornishman converse. I'd rather hear a choir singing flat. Chickens cackling in a barn, just like this one.
Gone!
Gone. I ask you, sir, what sort of word is that?
It's ow and gone that keep...
A lot of attention was paid to him at first, and Stanley Holloway and I were kind of pushed to one side. And so I sort of fudged around and did very badly. And I had this desperately awful feeling in the pit of my stomach that if I wasn't careful, I probably was going to be sent home. I'd seen it happen before, and I suspected it was going to happen to me. And then, quite miraculously, Moss Hart said that he'd like to work with me for about 48 hours. And for 48 hours, Moss did everything for me. He showed me how to do it. He bullied, he pleaded, he shoved, he cajoled, he pulled a performance out of me. And at times he was Eliza showing me what to do, and at times he told me I was behaving like a schoolgirl and to shape up and get on with it. And we really slogged away at it for the whole weekend. And on the Monday, the whole company met again, and I was very nervous because I knew everybody was watching to see if I could cut it now or not. And although I probably fell back about 50%, it seems that I made it because I stayed with the company, and it was the best learning experience I could ever have.
In both Pygmalion and My Fair Lady, Eliza Doolittle has to learn to speak proper English. That's the exact opposite of what Julie and I had to do for the role. We had to go from proper English to Cockney, but not really authentic Cockney, or we might not have been understood. Julie had a wonderful American coach named Alfred Dixon.
Now, let's take Just You White, Henry Higgins, Just You White.
Just you white, Henry Higgins, just you white.
A becomes an I.
I'm sorry. Just you white, Henry Higgins, just you white.
And now the rat. You're a gutter snipe, the
Just
rat.
you white, Henry Higgins, just you white.
And now the fury.
Just
You hate him.
White Henry Higgins.
He's a
just-
bully.
yes,
He's
yes,
kept you up all night.
Just you white, Henry Higgins.
Bread and water.
All right. Just you white, Henry Higgins, just you white.
Good. Now.
You'll be sorry, but your tears will be too light. You'll be broken on as money. Will I else you down be funny? Just you white, Henry Higgins, just you wait.
Just you wait, Henry Higgins, till you're sick. And you screams to fetch a doctor double quick. I'll be off a second later and go straight to the theater. Ha ha, Henry Higgins, just you wait.
Ooh, Henry Higgins, just you wait until we're swimming in the sea.
Ooh, Henry Higgins, and you gets a cramp a little ways from me. When you yell you're gonna drown, or get dressed and go to town. Ho, 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 Henry Higgins, ho, 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 Henry Higgins.
Just you wait.
Oh, that was wonderful, Julie. Absolutely perfect. Got the accent wonderfully.
Oh, thank you. What about the orchestra? Aren't they marvelous?
Are they?
Oh, yes, it's like, well, singing on a feather bed compared to that rehearsal piano.
Oh, Lord.
They're going to be marvelous.
Thank you.
It was very difficult for Rex. He'd never done a musical before. He never did one again. He was terrified when we went out of town to New Haven, terrified by suddenly being confronted with the orchestra. The sounds that emanated were unfamiliar. He'd been used to working with a pianist only. He didn't want to open that night. He had to be actually threatened with a lawsuit to get him on stage.
I'm an ordinary man who desires nothing more than just an ordinary chance to live exactly as he likes and do precisely what he wants. Can you hear me?
Yes.
What?
Yes, I can hear you, Rex.
Well, I can't hear you. How can you hear me?
Excuse me.
You don't seem to be blowing in this number. Would you mind just running to the back of the theater and seeing if you can hear me?
I play in a minute, Mr. Harrison.
You do? Ye gods.
From an average man, am I?
An average man am I, of no eccentric whim, who likes to live his life free of strife, doing whatever he thinks is best for him. Well, just an ordinary man. But let a woman in your life. Stop, 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 stop! Take it out. I demand that be taken out.
Take out what?
That yat-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta! It's so loud. How do I know where to sing?
You'll get used to it, Rex.
I will never get used to it. It's absolutely ridiculous for a man to be standing up here saying his lines with a symphony orchestra blasting away down there.
What would you like to do, Rex?
I'd like to do it as a straight play. That's what I'd like to do.
The night of our opening in New Haven, there was a blizzard, a snow blizzard, and it was terrible. People wondered if anybody would show up at the theater. And the amazing thing was that millions of people, it seems, came from New York. They drove through the snow in their limousines and so on, and made it. The show started late. The two turntables, which were so essential to the set design, didn't work. I'm sure Oliver Smith was having a heart attack. I know Rex seemed to be having a heart attack, and I know my heart was in my mouth. And everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
The first act was much too long. There was a ballet that didn't work at all. There were two numbers that didn't work, three numbers that didn't work. One of them was on the street where you lived. They were going to cut that. And the whole excitement of Eliza going to the ball didn't work at all because she appeared in a ball gown that was like everybody else's ball gown, and it didn't have any impact.
So Moss said, let's have her be ready for the ball in the study scene. So after Ascot, this tiny scene was written by Alan, and it was as I described, and at the end of it, Eliza appears at the top of the stairs in the study and just walks down the staircase, and both men are quite mesmerized by what they see, and the beautiful ball gown was shown in all its glory.
Alan and Fritz worked through the night, fixing the relatively few weak spots in the show. On the Street Where You Live was saved by adding a new verse. The ballet and two numbers were cut completely and painfully, but they knew it was the right thing to do. My Fair Lady played to packed houses in New Haven and Philadelphia and opened in New York to magnificent reviews. It was an even bigger success than they had dared dream about. It played for 6.5 years on Broadway, and won both the Drama Critics Award and the Tony for Best Musical. It ran for 6 years here in London, and there were touring companies all over the world. The movie was released in 1964 and introduced the genius of Lerner and Loewe to millions more.
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain.
Again.
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain.
I think she's got it. I think she's got it.
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain.
By George, she's got it. By George, she's got it. Now once again, where does it rain?
On the plain, on the plain.
And where's that soggy plain?
In Spain, in Spain.
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain. Bravo!
Wave a little bit, wave a little bit, wave a little bit, a lucky won't get hooked. Wave a little bit, wave a little bit, wave a little bit of blooming love.
At the gate are all the horses, waiting for the cue to fly away. What a ripping, absolutely ripping moment at the Ascot opening day.
I'm getting married in the morning. Ding dong, the bells are gonna chime. Some bloke who's able, lift up the table and get me to the church on time.
People stop and stare, they don't bother me. For there's nowhere else on earth that I would rather be. Let the time go by, I won't care if I can be here on the street where you
I believe Alan did want me to do the role of My Fair Lady. He often said he hoped I would. He sort of gently hinted that there was an awful lot going against me, that I wasn't a big name, that I'd never made a movie before, that I wasn't tested and tried in film. And to be honest, I didn't hold out that much hope that I was going to get the role. I wished for it and wanted it, but I don't think I thought I would get it. So it wasn't as desperately awful a disappointment as people think that it might have been. When the role was finally given to Audrey, I think it was perhaps a year later or a few months later, I met her. And I could well understand why she would have been cast, because she is a huge box office name, and I wasn't at the time, and they did need to cast stars in the film. And she said to me, "Oh, Julie," she said, I didn't have the guts to refuse it," which was nice.
My Fair Lady won the Oscar for Best Picture, and it was my pleasure to announce that Rex Harrison had won the Oscar for Best Actor.
Rex Harrison!
And lovely Julie Andrews won Best Actress for her performance in Mary Poppins.
I'll never know to this day whether it was sentiment that won it for me or whether the performance in Poppins really did. I think it's the sentiment myself.
Oh, it is lovely. I know you Americans are famous for your hospitality, but this is really ridiculous.
My Fair Lady is one of those miracles that happens too infrequently. The right people at the right time of their lives embarking on the right venture. It was the best kind of success, too. Artistic and commercial. Over $800 million and still earning. Hundreds of productions are done every year. Think of all the young women who have blossomed under Professor Higgins and have become even more than he expected. When Eliza finally stands up to Higgins, their musical sparring delights all of us.
I shall not feel alone without you. I can stand on my own without you. So all go back in your shell. I can do bloody well without...
By George, I really did it. I did it, I did it. I said I'd make a woman, and indeed I did. I knew that I could do it. I knew it, I knew it. I said I'd make a woman, and succeed I did. Eliza, you're magnificent. 5 minutes ago, you were a millstone round my neck, and now you're a tower of strength, a consort battleship. I like you this way.
Goodbye, Professor Higgins. You shall not be seeing me again.
Lerner and Loewe stayed true to George Bernard Shaw nearly to the end. In Shaw's play, Eliza leaves Higgins, but this wouldn't do for our two romantics. They didn't want to change Shaw's intent too much, so they wrote a love song that never once mentions the word love. A song that is a masterpiece of realization, remorse, and rage.
Damn, 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 damn. I've grown accustomed to her face. She almost makes the day begin. I've grown accustomed to the tune that she whistles night and noon. Her smiles, her frowns, her ups, her downs are second nature to me now. Like breathing out and breathing in. I was serenely independent and content before we met. Surely I could always be that way again. And yet, I've grown accustomed to her looks, accustomed to her voice, accustomed to her face.
I washed my face and hands before I come, I did.
Eliza? Where the devil are my slippers?
Lerner and Loewe were at the peak of their careers after My Fair Lady. In part 3, Richard Kiley takes you through the glorious years of Gigi and Camelot.
I'm Julie Andrews. Many